Afternoon. Welcome to the afternoon session of F8. I am Paula Cuneo. I'm the Director of Partner and Experience Marketing at Oculus, and I'll be hosting the afternoon sessions here. Quick housekeeping, silence phones, and really appreciate all you folks that have moved up to the front of the room so we can make sure that we give everyone our undivided attention. At Oculus, back when there were only a couple dozen people, we used to introduce everyone as a new employee with a fun fact, so we may be sprinkling one or two of those in today. I am really honored and pleased to present the next speaker, Casey Galang, who's a colleague and friend who heads the developer ecosystem at Oculus. Her fun fact is that she is a master food preserver. So as a minor food preserver, otherwise known as a urban canner, I know that it takes both art and science to make it work and not get botulism. I think that the balance of art and science is exactly how Casey approaches everything she does at work, including her support of developers. So please put your hands together for Casey Galang.
Thank you, everyone. So as Paula mentioned, I'm Casey, and after this session, we're going to meet at the end of, or rather out in the hallway. And if you want to talk about VR ecosystem, I'm going to be there. If you want to talk about food preservation, I'll also be there. But we're here today and right now to talk about the year ahead in VR. I know you're all really excited about getting to number 2, but before I get all passionate about the next year in VR, I want to make sure that we talk about the evolution and how far we've come. So that will happen in the next session, and then we'll talk about the next year, and it's going to be monumental. And then finally, if I could see a show of hands, how many folks are currently building VR content? Okay, I'd say about 30%. That's wonderful. I'm assuming that the rest of the 70% of you all are here and ready to get going. So the last part of my talk, we'll talk about the visions of possibility. I'll leave you with some best practices and insights that I've learned from fellow VR developers. So let's talk about the evolution and how we all got started. This is rather disputed. I did some research. Some people say that the concept of VR started back in the 1800s with a French avant-garde playwright who took the view that illusion was not distinct from reality. This served him really well, right? He wanted the audience to believe in everything that was happening on the stage and fully immerse themselves. Forget about what was happening beyond the theater doors. But is that really virtual reality? So I stopped my research and I thought about what was my first introduction. And that was through the great mind of Neal Stephenson in 1992 with Snow Crash. Mr. Stephenson brought me to the metaverse. He introduced literary characters like Hero the protagonist and my favorite female character, YT. And then in 1999, Sight, Sound, and Motion brought us The Matrix. And we were all doing the Nemo moves, right? So I want to take a moment to thank sci-fi, because that was my first introduction to VR. But truthfully, it was just fiction with one toe in fantasy. But to luminaries like our Oculus founders, this was a possibility. We, consumers, would actually experience VR firsthand with the introduction of DK1s in 2013. The VR revolution launched with a grassroots, developer-funded Kickstarter campaign. You see, it wasn't just Oculus founders who had that foresight. It was 9,522 developers who believed that mainstream VR was now, and they put their money on that bet. Oculus got its start from this very successful campaign. We shipped DK1s, which is our developer kit 1s, and then 2s, and then in 2016 we shipped Rift. Other players joined the revolution, and now there are thousands of new VR companies with career choices that are defined like mine, and you all are in this room. 70% of you are contemplating what you're going to build in VR and how you're going to show up And none of that could even have been built 5 years ago. And here I am, hopefully, ready to help you get started. But before I get there, I want to talk about what happened in 2015. This was my aha moment. Michael Abrash got on the keynote stage at F8, and he had us realize how real virtual reality could feel by doing a bunch of exercises. He said, real is just electrical signals interpreted by the brain. We went through exercises outside of VR that made us really understand that that was true. He had us believing reality is whatever your mind infers based on its model of the world. One by one, we transformed from non-believers to VR advocates. Our brains were not simply just recording what was in front of us. Our brains could actually reverse engineer reality. I highly recommend going out and looking at this video. It's amazing. I continue to be inspired by it today. That moment in 2015, we all walked out of that room, minds completely blown, and I couldn't stop thinking about all the possibilities of what could happen in VR. And so I rushed out to get this job. Over the past 5 years, we've seen thousands of creators, you all, bring your diverse voices to the table. We have productivity and education applications that are breaking new ground in how we work and learn. We have branded experiences. My family's favorite movie is Coco. We celebrate Dia de los Muertos. And then to have your ability to jump into the movie, into its settings, to become a whimsical animated skeleton and to interact with its lovable characters. That was so memorable. And have you had a social experience in VR yet? Talk about memorable. Physical distance is no longer an obstacle to have meaningful interactions with people. And of course, I have to take a moment to thank our game developers. They were first on our platform and helped push the bounds of VR to where it is today. A couple more moments I want to talk about. I was given this stage and I couldn't help myself but talk about my favorite program at Oculus. I'm wearing the shirt, you're seeing the slide. Oculus Start is a program that we created for smaller developer teams that gives them access to hardware, to support. So my team works with you one-on-one to make sure that you understand what you should build and what's next in VR. And then we've partnered with our loving friends at Unity and Unreal, and they're offering you savings. So check this out. And finally, we just recently released our creators portal, which gives all creators a space to learn and get support from Oculus. That was the evolution of VR. We've had so many shining moments over the past 5 years, but I believe what's in store in the next year is going to be a step change. So let's talk about the year ahead. This will be the year of reach, choice, and you all, VR creators. There are two major initiatives that are driving reach, and that is the launch of the standalone category and social enablement. Congratulations, you are all proud owners of an Oculus Go. The launch of Oculus Go in the standalone category makes VR native available to everyone at $199 today. Hugo also introduced 3 flagship experiences this morning for social entertainment in VR. And those are all embedded in Oculus Go. You see, with Oculus Go, VR is now more attainable and social. Combine this with Oculus Rift and Gear VR and all of the other VR devices, plus the previous 5 years that we just talked about. And you can quote me. I'm going to go out on a limb. I didn't ask the comms people. But I truly believe that this will be the year of massive reach. Now let's talk about choice. You all are sharing your diverse voices, and as a result, we're seeing more diverse types of content in VR. This translates into broader interests and activities that are more compelling to everyone. Already, we've seen how VR experiences change the way we learn, work, share, play, hang out, consume information. We've seen you change the way we see the world. The year of choice in VR is now. And more people are becoming VR creators. Because there are so many new ways of doing VR, and much of it is uncharted, the lot of you and your ingenuity will make this also the year of VR creators. Your vision will define the VR landscape. Now I just ask, how will you show up? Chloe Skew is a producer at Turtle Rock. With all of their VR projects, they really rethink their approach with VR. And it has resulted in some heart-pumping, scream-inducing experiences like Face Your Fears. And Aldrich and the team at Mixed Realm, they really make it so that you can become a live-action star in movies like with the launch of Sorrento. And then Clarama has built Teacher's Pet. This is an important training tool for teachers that puts them in the shoes of their students and challenges their introspective awareness, thereby providing an anti-implicit bias training tool. As you've seen by these few examples, you'll need to approach VR with a brand new mindset. Think broadly like Clarama and Aldrich and Chloe. Since this is your year, I want to challenge you to expand your minds. What meaningful interaction do you want to have with people in VR? Because porting from 2D is no longer an option. Tech demos are not successful. If you're like me, you're going to pull out a bunch of whiteboards, and it's going to be really fun work. And once you land on your vision, that will inform the path for your approach, your design, and how you'll measure success. This is where my best practices come in. Once you've decided how you'll show up in VR, and potentially the tips of your fingers are blue because you're like me and you can't get those whiteboards with the erasers, I don't know why, you'll want to define how your vision is going to come to life. And there are 4 approaches to VR. Web VR utilizes web browsers to make immersive media possible. At Oculus, we provide React VR as the platform to do that. PC VR requires a high-powered computer that makes full immersion possible with high fidelity and presence. I'm sure you've all heard of Rift. And then mobile 3DOF sometimes requires a phone, but with Oculus Go is a standalone device. And that has a controller that allows you to do core interactions like pointing and swiping with single-handed movement. And finally, there's the standalone 6DOF, which is quite similar to Rift with regards to immersion and fidelity, but it doesn't require a PC and is thereby tetherless. At Oculus, this is Project Santa Cruz, yet to be launched. So now that you know how to approach VR and you understand what devices you're going to target, you now want to define your design. We are past the point of novelty. Presence is a big deal. Interactivity is very important. And in this phase, you're going to define your expression. So let's go into each of these. Okay, I'm going to disclose a little bit of my age right now. I was in the online advertising business in the late 90s. and Punch the Monkey was a banner ad on a lot of websites. And although it was very engaging for a minute, it was a novelty. And once you found out what the advertisers really wanted you to do, it was no longer engaging. But online advertising was just getting its start. And putting your space in this tiny little box and trying to compete in an otherwise noisy environment made banner ads like this pop up, novelties. VR is past this point. If you're going to build a VR experience, build it with purpose. Ask yourself, how do people want to interact with me? How do people want to interact with my company? How do they want to interact with my experience? And the answer to that question will be your purpose. Okay, now let's talk about presence. Remember in your vision when you defined approach, you defined which device or devices that you were going to target, and with that choice comes very specific levels of presence. If you chose PC, you obviously chose Oculus Rift and Touch. And you want to ensure that you present hands in VR. Because from a user perspective, this movement, you also want to see what you're doing visually. And that provides a stronger level of presence. And then another example of presence is voice over IP. For social experiences, this is meaningful because I can hear who's talking to me. But also, when I'm the speaker, I can feel the reverberation of my voice in my body, which makes that feeling of presence even stronger. This is a video from my friends at Robot Invader for Dead Secret. This is in VR. In 2D experiences, you can allow people to open drawers and doors and take a look at things, but they can't look around the corner or look up or look down and really bend and move within the experience. In VR, you can allow your user to wander and discover at leisure. They can open drawers, they can open files, they can take notes, they can type on a typewriter. What I'm trying to say is that environment is very important in VR, and having these levels of interactivity are even more important. And now with expression. When you're in this design phase, try and ask yourself or present your design and your vision into these 3 expressions. How will it show up if you were closer to realism? And then how about fantasy? And what about approximation? By asking yourself, while building this vision, to present it in each of these 3 ways, you'll have a very clear expression that will make for a more meaningful VR experience. Now let's talk about success metrics. Whether you're creating VR experiences for internal use or as an avenue for entertainment or brand engagement, you really want to think about this not as a land grab of mindshare, but as meaningful interactions. Just like everything in VR, your success metrics should be rethought. You're not trying to identify impressions or butts in seats or number of eyeballs. Rather, your measurement of success should be aligned to your vision and then add meaningful interactions. This is a new success metric, but it's quite easy to define because you all went through that design exercise and you were able to identify all of those moments in time that you've had a meaningful interaction with people. So flag them as your opportunity for meaningful interactions. Okay, VR can have a monumental effect. Your ability to evoke emotion, to make meaningful connections, to drive interactions that are unlike any that you've had before with people are completely unlocked in VR. You have your audience's full attention. When creating your vision, approach it with a fundamental reimagining of anything you've ever done before. To wrap it up, so much is possible in VR. You have more impactful interactions with the audiences that you are hugging into your VR experience than ever before. And imagine what profound effects that can have. To do this, though, you'll need to build with purpose. We've come a long way from the great minds of sci-fi literature to today. Broader interests are here, more compelling content arrives every day, and with it comes swells of diverse people. The VR audience is growing rapidly. And this is your year. Join me in the VR ecosystem now, today. I look forward to seeing what you've got. Thanks so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, Casey Galang, thank you so much. We don't have time for questions today, so as Casey said, she's going to be out in the back for any quick questions you have. The next session is going to start at 1:30, and again, housekeeping, if you can just pick up all your snack wrappers and be responsible, that would be great. Thanks again, Casey.